The Vinyl Destination.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. This is The Vinyl Destination, a brand new podcast talking about albums that we love. And my name's Dion Rush. I'm here with Johnny Brister and Mike Kenner. Say hello, boys.
Hello, boys.
So, as you can probably tell, we're obviously not doing this in the room together, given all of this current situation. So, we just thought it'd be a bit of fun to do a little remote podcast and see where we end up. So, how are you guys doing? All right?
Yeah, really good, actually. This was something that me and Mike had discussed actually for a long period of time ago. Wouldn't it be cool if we just did a little podcast? And then I guess what this has done is offered an opportunity to go, let's do it.
Well, we're not up to much else right now. A whole lot of practice.
Yeah. Looking at the diary, it's just barren, isn't it, for the next couple of months at minimum? So
minimum,
it's not looking good.
Yeah,
it's later this year is already kind of slowly disappearing as well.
Yeah,
it's I don't think we'll be gigging for a while.
I spoke to someone yesterday and they said that they believe it won't be really properly until next year that it will be back on its feet a bit.
I think so. All festivals are cancelled.
Yeah.
But we've got everyone's gigs now on Facebook to watch instead.
That's it. There you go. Facebook Live in
there.
Harrowing.
Or Dion's quizzes, which
I have to say, absolutely.
And we've got one tonight, right?
You've got one tonight, yeah.
Oh, I'm excited. This is my first quiz experience,
mate. Every room in the house I go to, there's Dion's doing a quiz with one of my housemates. It's just everywhere. So I'm looking forward to tonight. What have you named it tonight?
It's called Water Under the Quiz.
Oh, I like it.
So I was thinking actually earlier that I feel like the idea for this podcast has come a little bit out of when we used to be in the van and we would go through that book that you had, Johnny, of the top 100 albums or something.
No, I think it was 1,001 albums.
That was it, yeah. That was it.
You must listen to. And that's right. We used to flick through and on a big drive, we'd take it in terms of choosing one.
Exactly.
Choosing a number. Wasn't it? We just chose a number.
That's it.
Random.
Yeah, that's right.
And then whatever it was, you had to listen to it.
And
there was a couple of vetoes.
I'm trying to think of there was a band we listened to, and I was just like, "What is this? How did it make the cut?"
Yeah.
But there were some banging records actually.
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Should we talk about what we've picked today then? So I think Johnny, it was Johnny or Mike? It was your choice, I believe. It was.
It came from Mike saying, "Let's pick an English artist."
That was right. Yeah. That's it.
And then we somehow got onto Phil Collins, and I always want to say Phil Mitchell when I say Phil Collins. So bear with me if I do.
Very different people. I must say.
Hey, mate, I saw Phil Mitchell and Panther, and I have to say he was pretty good.
I'm not going to lie. I'd like to see this album covered by Phil Mitchell. I mean, maybe that's something he could do.
I'd want that just for the artwork.
It would look the same.
I'd literally buy it for the artwork.
It would look the same.
It would, because... right, so actually, a fact on this, he did a reissue a few years ago. I can't remember.
Oh, that's right. And he redid the photos as well.
Correct, right? Yeah. So
yeah.
On the original one, he had his long hair... I mean, you can see at the back his hair. It's really thick. His hair wasn't that thick at the front. And me and Mike can relate to all this. But he did a reissue, so now he's bold at the back, and so you wouldn't know if it was Phil Mitchell or Phil Collins.
I think. Are you talking about? Was it the 2016 remaster of I think he just recreated all of his album covers up to date, didn't he?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's what he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah,
I've actually got the original that I got from my mum. She gave me a few years ago on vinyl. Yeah, it's really cool. We're not actually filming this, are we?
No, we're not filming it, but we can see it.
There's his hair at the back. Look at that.
That is strong hair game.
Yeah, really strong hair game. Very, very good hair. So yeah, this was actually my mum. So she gave this to me a few years ago when I started collecting vinyls.
Oh, mate.
I think my mum's got this out. I think it's a
Every
mum
mum's
album.
got it.
I think
Yeah.
every mum's. It's one of those. You know.
I'm pretty
every
sure.
mum.
I've learned that everybody loves a podcast, but I'm not sure if everyone's going to love ours. But all our mums are going to listen to this and gonna love it.
100%. I already told my. I'm
of
sure you've
course.
told your mums about it as well. My mum is bang on it. She can't wait. She can't wait.
Yeah.
Maybe we should introduce it as this is Vinyl Destination, a podcast for our mums. 'Cause I have a
I
feeling
agree.
that is probably the only audience we're going to have.
If
Well,
we
I
get
told my-
only 3 listeners, I'm happy with, and it would be our mums. So.
We're done. Then we've filled our quota.
Yeah, my mum will listen more than once for sure. She actually, and that's the thing. So like, my mum is a huge Phil Collins fan. So I was introduced very early. She's actually a big Genesis fan, I should say. So I guess for anyone who's listening who doesn't know much about Phil's history in that, the Genesis records, which are a prog band. Yeah, and you can hear a lot of this you can hear some prog for sure in Face Value.
Absolutely, yeah.
And what a band as well, Genesis.
Yeah.
Outrageous, yeah.
Think about the musicians like Mike Rutherford, Mike and the Mechanics, Peter Gabriel, you've got Steve Hackett, Tony Banks, and Phil. How many incredible musicians in
heavy hitters all in one go there, isn't it?
In one go, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Who like you say Peter Gabriel, listen to his record So that you guys introduced me to, which is now one of my favourite records of all time. Like they're all amazing within their own right.
Yeah,
but it's so multi-talented as well. We can delve into that with this album with Phil, but it's just insane. Like vocally, instrumentally, they're all just beasts. It's just pretty
amazing
inspiring stuff.
Yeah, how do you have Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins in the same band?
and you remember, Phil didn't sing. So
no, he was just he was a drummer.
That's the crazy thing. That's the crazy thing.
Man.
Yeah. It's outrageous. So do you want to hit us with a few facts then, Johnny? So obviously...
I've done my history lesson.
You've done your Wikipedia.
No, I actually went in a little bit more than that. So I've actually got Not Dead Yet, Phil Collins' autobiography.
I've been meaning to read that, actually.
I would say you could borrow it, but I can't get it to you. So, but in time, when I can see you again, I'll give it to you. It's amazing.
I used to always see that, Johnny, on the dashboard of your van when you'd park anywhere. You had that book in your van, I remember.
Well, the truth is, it took me 2 years to read, and it's not because it's not really good. It's just I never really got into reading, which is bizarre as well, because my mum works in a library and has done for years and years. But I had it, and then one time I sat down, I was like, I'm going to read this, and it was so interesting. But I just kind of got some more facts off there. So here's my history lesson. So basically, he was on tour with Genesis in 1978, and then that's when his wife at the time started having an affair with his decorator. So they were decorating the house.
Oh, mate, that is brutal. Bloody hell.
That's pretty brutal, man.
and there's something we should touch upon later, because there was a Top of the Pops show, and he had a paint pot next to his piano. Just by chance, somebody was trying to put some props on the stage, right? And everyone's like, oh, it's a sign for the decorators who had an affair with his wife, which apparently it's got nothing to do with that. But you should Google it afterwards. I forget what song it was.
That's so bad. Oh my goodness.
The coincidence of that.
That's one step up, though, from having an affair with a milkman, isn't it? The decorator. I mean, that's serious.
Mate, my dad's a decorator, and I'd have to say that I imagine the milkman.
It wasn't him, was it?
Well, the funny thing is that my dad looks a little bit like Phil Collins, so maybe. So, Dad, if you're listening, oh, Mum, you're definitely listening. Dad would explain my hairdo, I guess. So anyway, so she was Canadian, and so when they broke up, she moved back to Canada, and then Genesis allowed him to compassionate leave. So he moved to Vancouver to win back his family. And then during this period, I think it was only 3 in Genesis at that time. I think by this point, Peter Gabriel had left and some of the others.
Yeah.
So the 2 that were left went and started their own solo career. So then he came back, didn't win his family back. And then he ended up playing drums on John Martin's record, Grace and Danger, which, if I'm honest, I've not heard. I don't know it. But it was that period that he met Eric Clapton. and obviously we'll talk about this later. But Eric played on what did he play on? If Leaving Me Is Easy.
Yeah.
He also played on 2 tracks, didn't he?
Did he?
What on this album? Huh?
Yeah, man. He's playing the slide as well.
Was he playing the slide on that?
It's The Roof Is Leaking.
The Roof Is Leaking.
The Southern American kind of. Yeah, that's
no.
that's
It's actually Joe Partridge apparently to the album sleeve.
Is it really?
No.
Yeah, apparently it says Joe Partridge, and Phil actually said that he wrote all these post-it notes because he wanted it to be really personal. So
And that's the inside sleeve of the vinyl.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
I have to say, I'm pretty sure it's Clapton on The Roof Is Leaking, man.
Is it really? Oh, that's a
I
little
think so.
point of contention there. We'll have to look into that one. Oh, controversial.
He's got the album out.
He's got the album.
I don't want to bring it out. I don't want to wave it about, but I'm waving it. Okay.
Let me just call Eric and ask him. Hello, Eric.
Get him on the line.
It turns out you've actually got Flat Eric's number. The wrong one. He's just there. Dum, 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 dum. Anyway, so he met Eric Clapton, and then later in that 79, he plays on Peter Gabriel's 3rd album, and that's where they notably created the gated drum sound, apparently.
Yeah. So that's a big part of, obviously, In the Air Tonight and stuff like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Yep.
Huge.
It's just a Phil Collins sound, isn't it?
Yeah, and apparently they made it on the 3rd album, Pete Gabriel's album, which I actually don't know if I know that album, so I'd have to check that out. So then it became very popular, apparently, to have your own little home studio, which is where he came across the Roland CR78 drum machine. And he was just making doodles. I think he had time, and he was just... He never really sat down and go, I'm going to write an album. He just started writing songs, and I guess it was his release. Then Duke was released in 1980, so that was the Genesis record. And then the summer of 1980, he starts recording Face Value. He met which became his second wife, Jill. So the whole album, he claims, isn't all doom and gloom. Actually, it's got some uplifting moments in there.
Oh yeah, it comes across, doesn't it? For sure, that definitely comes. It's got its ups and downs, you know.
Yeah, definitely. And then, basically, he signs up to Virgin, and it goes on to sell 5 million copies in the US and 1.5 million in the UK.
Nice.
That's right.
And if I got my facts right, was it 13th of Feb 1981? I think it was released.
It was
correct?
1981.
Yeah.
Which for music was a pretty sick year because you had like Stevie Nicks brought Belladonna out.
One of my favourite records.
Dire Straits, Making Movies came out. Duran Duran's first record came out in 81 as well.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. Pearls by Elkie Brooks, which was kind of a collection of like older tracks and some new studio tracks, and Ghost in the Machine by the Police.
Cool.
Which is a sick record.
Someone's done their research. I like it.
Wow. I have
like
to say,
it.
I certainly have investigated.
You must have some time on your hands.
Yeah.
Do you know what I think is quite interesting, right? So, Johnny, you said he started recording it in the summer of 1980. Is that right?
Yes. So
I read that he finished recording it in January 1981. Is that right? Because if he recorded it in January and then released it in February, that's a proper quick turnaround. I mean, is that factually correct? Because that's pretty...
the fact I got... I'm not totally sure. I mean, most of this I've taken from his book.
Yeah.
We're going to need the facts here, Johnny. We're going to need the facts.
I've got all the demos were kept and overdubbed in 80 and 81. So it was released in 81.
So it must have done it January and then released in February.
Wow, that's a really quick release. But basically, he wanted to keep all the demos, and then he added. So he didn't want to lose anything that he'd already done.
Yeah. Okay.
And he also says that here's a nice little fact, actually, it was in his book, is that what he does when he does lyrics, so he often writes music first, and he was toying, let's say, In the Air Tonight, he was toying around with the drum machine, and then he just sings. He doesn't have any lyrics written down, he just sings, and then afterwards he kind of makes out what he's saying. And there's a great little picture in his autobiography where he jotted down the lyrics from listening back to the demo, and it was on a letter that was letterheaded from the Decorators within the Air Tonight lyrics, and he's still got it now. Yeah. So what about that? Like, the Decorator has an affair with your wife, but you write In the Air Tonight and write the lyrics. on your piece of paper. It's so good.
And you said he's still got that bit of paper?
Yeah, because there's a photo in the autobiography and he talks about it, and he didn't intentionally write it on there. I think it was just a piece of paper in his house that he used.
Grabbed it and jotted it down. There's a lot. It's interesting, isn't it? There's a lot to be said for just like, obviously he's just singing, you know.
Yeah.
And what's coming out's coming out. Like the lyrics that came out were the lyrics that came out, and you know. So it's like make sense of them afterwards. But obviously, there's a lot to be said for just letting the feel of like what you're hearing and what you're feeling just come out, and trying to make sense of that, which is really cool. Do you know what I mean?
It's an interesting approach, and he said that Genesis used to do that, used to write the music and then they'd write the lyrics afterwards, which is interesting. So I imagine most people, I can't say most people, but a lot of people would write lyrics and then have a feeling of what mood they want to create musically, right?
For me personally, I'm really, really bad at writing lyrics. I really want to try and get better, actually. But I'm very much get the mood of the song down and the kind of semi-arrangement.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of people would write to the melody, you know, they'd have a melody and they'd, you know, but I think to just sing and make the lyrics up on the fly as you go is totally something that's not done a lot. Phonetically, some things just sound better.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so,
absolutely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm pretty sure the lyrics he sang on this were the lyrics that made the record. I'm pretty sure that.
I think so. Yeah.
Just off the fly, you know.
Should we talk a bit about where it was recorded? I believe Townhouse Studios predominantly. 150 Goldhawk Road, Shepherd's Bush. There we go. Big up the Shepherd's Bush.
Wow, I didn't know that. Because obviously Phil is from Northwest London, right? It's from your neck of the woods.
He's from Hounslow, actually, which is West London.
Right, yeah.
He's a Hounslow boy.
I think that studio apparently was built by Richard Branson in '78. So it was obviously part of the Virgin Studios group, hence why.
Wow. So is it still there? I don't know it.
Do you know what? I don't know. I actually don't know. But I do know that it's a bunch of people. I mean, Elton John, Queen, obviously Phil Collins, Philip Bailey, The Jam, Asia, Brian Ferry, Coldplay, Muse, Duran Duran. All of these big hitters, you know, apparently recorded there.
Well, it must be recent then if Coldplay have...
So it must still be there. But I believe, again, I don't know this sort of like the amount that it was split, but then there was a bit done in LA as well, a place called the Village Recorder, and also Oldcroft in Shalford in Surrey, which I think
that's his home.
That's his home, isn't it?
That's his house, yeah.
I thought so. So we've obviously done a few overdubs and stuff there, or who knows?
Well, I mean, I guess a lot of it was recorded there. So he said that he had a piano in a room, he had his drum machine, so they're probably talking about the original demos, I guess. And then stuff was overdubbed after that. Well, then the LA thing would make sense because they had the Phoenix Horns on there, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the choir as well, actually, on...
Hand in Hand?
Yeah, the children's choir is in an LA children's choir, I believe.
Yeah, it says Children from the Churches of Los Angeles.
That's it, exactly. Yeah. That's right. So should we talk a bit about the players and stuff on the album, if you guys fancy it?
The guy that stood out for me, and obviously Phil, but was John Giblin. And I'd never heard of John Giblin, but when I researched him, it turns out he's obviously done a lot of big stuff, great session bass player. But there was him and another guy called Alphonso Johnson.
Another guy called Alphonso. Alphonso Johnson is the man.
Is he Weather Report? Is that right?
Yeah. He was in Weather Report before Jacko.
Yeah.
And
man,
he's
really?
just like, mate. He's the guy. Like, he's just a jazz beast. He's played like with Chet Baker and Santana and stuff as well, and just he's all over it.
John Giblin really stood out for me, so I don't know if you can give us any info on him, but he was amazing.
He played on 3 tracks on the album. He played on In the Air Tonight, obviously the biggest single on the record, Thunder and Lightning, and I'm Not Moving. And actually Thunder and Lightning is probably my favourite track on there, because that's the one, it's so like Earth, Wind and Fire. It's got so much kind of funk to it. Like
he's also on Tomorrow Never Knows.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. I have to say, not a huge fan. I've got to admit that. Yeah, I usually get to the end of the record and sometimes skip that. You know, it's the same though. Does anyone else do this? Like when there's a huge single on an album, and you just you skip it because you've just heard it so many times. Like, because for me, the album usually starts for me with "This Must Be Love," like the second track, because I can't. Sometimes you just can't. You're like, oh man, I gotta skip. I can't.
But I have to say, I've really enjoyed listening to In the Air Tonight. But I know what you're saying, because there's an Aretha Franklin record, and it opens with Respect, and I have to start from track 2 because I have overheard that song, although it's such a great song. But yeah, I don't feel that with In the Air Tonight. I actually still love it, and it's so iconic because I decided to watch some live stuff with Phil, and I watched Live Aid when he went from England to America, and in America, is it Philadelphia? Is that right? Philadelphia?
Potentially.
I forget now, but he plays In the Air Tonight, but it's just piano. And when the big drum, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but when the big drum break comes, the crowd sing the drum fill. And how iconic is that feel that a whole, however many thousands of people sing that do 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 do. It's just amazing.
Man, it probably is the most iconic drum fill of all time, isn't it? I mean, you would, everyone knows it. I mean, it's got to be for me as well. It's just that the sound of those toms just gets, no matter how many times I've heard that song, those toms, man, it's the delivery, isn't it? He just absolutely lamps them.
Yeah. But he also has like his bottom, I assume for recording as well, but for all the live stuff I've seen, he doesn't have any bottom heads on his drums. So it's that old school sound. Sounds amazing. Yeah. Who doesn't know that drum fill, you know? Especially
after the Cadbury's advert. With the monkey, with the gorilla.
Unfortunately, so have you seen the guy it came up on Facebook the other day where he smashes his cupboards closed doing that?
I saw that. That did the rounds.
Again, like, it's still, well, we're talking next year. Next year, this album is 40 years old.
Oh, mate, that's just really put it into perspective. That's crazy.
And still to this day, people do that drum fill. And also, it opens up the album. How amazing to open an album like that.
I mean, it is the track of the record, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's not my favourite, actually, but yeah, you're right. It is.
I'm not surprised you still listen to that, Johnny, because you are the king of playing songs to death. Like, how many times we had to listen to Love Roller Coaster by Ronan Keating on tour.
If you're not listening to Roller Coaster more than once a day, I don't know. I don't know how you're getting through the day.
Start your day the right way with a bit of Ronan.
And let's be honest, every time it came on, you guys were singing.
Absolutely. I love it as much as you do. I'm well up.
Mike, you were caught doing it at karaoke on more than one occasion. So I don't know.
That's true. I'll admit that.
And you signed us up for it, and you chose the song.
I may have had a drink. I may have had a drink or two that night.
So my favourite track, actually, I was going to say, is actually Droned. So it's track 5.
It's the one that comes out, isn't it, of the roof is leaking. It's almost like they need to happen together. Like you have to listen to one. It's almost like just an extended outro for me. That's what it feels like.
It's like the prog section of the album. Now, if you think about it, he obviously came from a prog rock band in Genesis, but yet this record sold so well commercially. Yet he's got a prog section in there. Like I was thinking earlier, I had never listened this morning, and you almost can't put your finger on it what genre the album is.
Well, it's classed. It says pop rock / art rock, if that's right.
Art rock, wow.
Art rock. I'd have to say there's massive Earth, Wind and Fire influences in here. Yeah. Loads of old soul. I mean, especially with the horn sections and the stabs and hits and stuff. And I'd even say there's some Weather Report in there as well. I'd have to say, like, there's definitely that kind of fusion aspect to it, which I guess makes it difficult to decide on a genre because it kind of has a bit of a few things.
Which is rare to happen though nowadays, right? Like how often, or any time, how often do you hear a record and you're like I listen to some tracks and go, well, imagine if Quincy had produced that, like, because it's kind of disco, funky soul, and imagine if you had like. Because this is only a couple of years after Off the Wall by Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
But imagine you had Quincy on some of these songs, you'd be like, what? It's like those disco funk songs, and they're so great. You know, I'm talking about a couple of tracks on the record. But then you have the prog section, and then you have some really more poppy stuff, and then you got these ballads. So it's really amazing to listen to.
So I love The Roof is Leaking, actually. on this one. It's it for me. It really stands out. It's like totally different.
Yeah.
Even the setting of the narrative of the song is like that Southern American kind of frontiers,
banjo
kind
and
of vibe.
slide guitar.
The Delta Blues slide vibe. It's really nice.
I could swear that's Clapton on there, man. I gotta say,
I'm only going from what's on the album, what it says here.
Yeah,
I reckon Clapton snuck in and did an alternative take, and they made the album, but Phil didn't tell him. Phil didn't tell the guy.
So he just get the name. Well, actually, the track that Clapton does play on, "If Leaving Me Is Easy," there's a bit in his book that because they became friends. I think it was 79. I wrote down, and he wanted him to play more in the studio, but Clapton, because he doesn't play much on the song, does he?
No, it's pretty sparse.
But Eric Clapton was like, no, this is just what I think the song needs. And Phil's going, I want a bit more of Eric on there. But it's amazing, actually. But I think it's just the one song, but I could be wrong. I'm just going off the record here.
Fair enough.
In terms of favourite tunes, my one actually, I keep coming back to Hand in Hand, because it's just, I love that, the vocal melody. That da 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 na 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 with the choir, and then it's like the A and the B. It cuts into like the B section, and I love they all just start like stretching out a bit more towards the end. Like the bass starts to go a bit ham, he starts filling a bit more, and it's just I just really like something about sitting there listening to it is really quite relaxing. That was the one for me, and it's also a track. It's bang in the middle of the album, isn't it? It almost like splits the two halves.
Have you guys seen Seriously Live in Berlin 1990?
Oh, probably. No. I've seen all of them, man. Yeah. Which one's this one? That's not the one with the circular stage?
No. They open with that track, Dion, in Berlin. And actually, Phil Collins mentions that this is his favourite performance live because it wasn't long after the Berlin Wall had been knocked down. And he said the energy was just incredible there. Well, they open with that, and he comes out and he plays the drums. And if anyone is questioning if Phil Collins is any good at drums, because he's kind of a Marmite guy, right? You kind of love or hate him.
Absolutely.
But
he
sounds phenomenal playing the drums, and that's the opening track. So even if you've got 5-10 minutes later, stick it on. It's called Seriously Live in Berlin, 1990. Opening track sounds banging, so good, and Phil is on fire.
I got to say, actually, from a musician's point of view, like if you want to find some good live stuff to listen to, any Phil Collins live stuff, because it's always like a session A list on that stuff, like
Lee Sklar,
always
Horns, yeah,
or Nathan East. It's bass wise, it's always it's always Lee Sklar or Nathan East on most of it. Who are just.
I saw him live in Paris. I want to say it was 2017. And actually, to be fair, like he's got really old now, and he walks on with a walking stick, and he's got a chair in the middle. And he's actually got his son now, or was playing for him, so he was like 15 or 16, and he sounded great. But it was Lee Sklar on bass, and I'm a big Lee Sklar fan.
Oh, I think he might be my fave, man. I like Lee Sklar. He's one of those guys that's just always right. Like, always perfect. Like everything he plays, it's just so good.
Always a killing band. And Daryl Stuermer.
Daryl Stuermer's been with him like forever.
Since Genesis days.
He joined Genesis after Steve Hackett, I believe, in 78.
I think so. Yeah. He did a lot of the live stuff, I think, for sure. Like he was always touring with them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so basically he, apart from Clapton playing, actually Daryl plays on If Leaving Me Is Easy anyway. He also plays on The Roof Is Leaking. He's playing the banjo. So he's playing on every song that has guitar. He plays Daryl Stuermer.
On the whole album.
And he plays live with him. And the whole band is incredible live. Like, really good.
I heard that Daryl Stuermer got the audition as he was friends with Alphonso Johnson, and he recommended him. And I think he auditioned in 78 and got the gig like the same week or something, and was then, with Genesis all the way up until, it was 92, I think. And then obviously when they kind of formed again in, was it 07 or something like that, he was there
2007, again. They did like another one.
you know, him and Alfonso Johnson were sort of pals, and he was like, oh man, yeah, come and audition for this band, and then literally got it the same week. I mean, that's doesn't really happen like that anymore.
Pretty good going. I think I don't know if they were playing for someone, or I think it was just through session work and just knowing each other and being mates and stuff, you know.
If I remember rightly, I mean, Genesis and Phil Collins is his main gig, Daryl Stuermer, but I think he's done a bunch of solo stuff as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has done a lot of solo stuff. And interestingly as well, he's American, right? Whereas Genesis aren't. So that's interesting how that comes. I mean, it's not such a thing now, right? And a lot of these bands might move out to the States, but it's interesting as a British band to then bring in American session musicians.
Yeah.
Although John Giblin's Scottish, right?
Yeah, he's Scottish, and Alfonso Johnson's obviously from the States.
Yeah. So. But then you've got Plattman on the record, who's British. So, like, it's quite interesting the different people he brought into this, actually. And it's obviously people he's met through Genesis or on tour and things like that. I actually really love having something on vinyl and listening through to a whole album, because I think it's very easy now to pick a track, make your own playlist, which obviously I love Spotify for so many reasons. It's amazing. But having the record, listening to it, turning it over, having it in stereo in good speakers, because that's how it was meant to be heard.
That's how it was. Yeah, it was recorded that way. Like,
yeah.
It was recorded for vinyl, right? So, you know, you can remaster stuff, obviously, to sound better on different platforms, but you know, those records were recorded for vinyl, so that, you know, that's how they're intended to be listened to, and as a body of work as well, because you would stick a record on it and listen to that record. You wouldn't, you know, keep changing, keep moving the pin around. Like, you just listen to the record through, and that is it's lost now, because there's a lot of people, you talk to someone about, oh, I love this Phil Collins track, and you're like, oh, that's the one from, you know, But Seriously or something, and they go, oh, I don't know, because it's just like they're just choosing their songs, like playlists, obviously, and stuff, which is another great way of getting music and listening to music, you know, especially if you're listening to a playlist with a lot of stuff on it that you haven't heard before. It's a good way of picking up new stuff. But like, you miss like a lot of these songs. Like, for instance, we were talking about it earlier, that The Roof Is Leaking, going straight into Droned,
which then goes straight into Hand in Hand, I think.
Yeah, well, there's a lot, isn't there? There's a lot of these tunes that come together, like they kind of mix together, which again, you don't really get as much anymore. I can't remember them. The last one, I think, was Janelle Monáe's first record. I think there was like the first 3 or 4 tunes were like bam, 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 straight into one another, and it was really cool to listen to like that. And doesn't really happen as much no more.
Well, you could argue nowadays it's more catered towards the audience of an album. Sounds often nowadays, you know, a pop album is more like a collection of singles, isn't it, rather than
of course,
sort of a body of work that is you know, obviously there's huge exceptions. That's not generalizing, but
well, I think there's a lot of albums that end up having the singles and then a lot of throwaway songs.
Yeah, for sure. Like the filler tracks. Yeah.
But EPs has become a thing again.
Yeah.
Well, I guess and that comes down to the listener, because I actually asked my mum about this record, and I said, what was it like when it came out? She doesn't really remember, but she did say, or she used to tell me about when I was younger, when she used to save up her money and she'd go and buy the record from the record store, and then she'd go home and she'd listen to it. Whereas now, even I fall for this sometimes, is that I'm like, I've got so much stuff I could listen to. What should I do? And you know, you talk about a body of work. I've learned that more and more in these last couple of weeks, because I'm very lucky. I've got a nice little vinyl collection here, and I kind of start going through and learning a little bit about them. And it's like The Colour and the Shape, Foo Fighters, that was written as supposed to be a therapy session. Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf, that's supposed to be heard as changing through the radio stations, driving from LA to the desert. And you go like, oh wow, like these musicians are actually creating so much bigger than a lot of us even realize.
Yeah, and there were those kind of almost prog records that, or concept albums as well, which were like, they would tell a story, you know, and so you listen to them. You know, an album was created as you listen to it start to finish, almost like a movie. You know, you don't just go with a movie. You don't just drop in and watch like the best bit of the movie and fuck the rest off.
I mean, there's also something to be said about how should you listen to music. You should just listen to it however you want, really. Like, I don't think everything has to be analysed. I've really enjoyed this process because I've learned a lot as a musician, and I have an interest in like how people make records now. But there's definitely something to be said about you can just stick a record on and listen to it as well. You don't have to analyse it. But you're right in what you're saying.
Going back to the vinyl thing as well, the actual act of putting on a vinyl, it forces you to actually just sit down and listen to an album and not do anything else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not passively listening. It's more...
It's do you know, because, I mean, I think, you know, being our age, you know, I remember getting CDs in the same fashion, because obviously for us it was CDs. And
what was your first CD you ever bought?
Oh, man. I can't remember. But look, one of the first ones I bought must have been something like, I remember like the iconic ones for me were like Californication. Cool. I remember buying that CD, but I'm sure I had CDs before that, but I remember this one. And it was because like, I used to love buying the CD, similar to your mum's story, like going home, sticking it on. But I used to then read the lyrics in the book, like I'd open the little booklet and like listen to it and read it at the same time and just completely get into it. And maybe that's why we're musicians, because we just were so into it that we did stuff like that. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? But man, I remember that, loving that. And that's not a thing anymore.
Yeah. I remember my first purchase. I remember it well because I got told off. So I went to, I grew up in Somerset, and I went to Yeovil and I went to the record store or CD shop or whatever. And my friend Chase said to me, "You've got to buy these two albums." So I went and bought Dre 2001.
Oh, great album. Great album.
That's a killing album.
And Prodigy, Fat of the Land, right? So,
another great
album.
I
get in the car, my mum drives us home. I'm 10 years old, and I put on Dre 2001. And I don't know, my mum, you're definitely listening right now, but I don't know if you can remember this, but she was like, "You are not listening to that around me." Because you can imagine like the lyrics. So I take it out, I put Dre 2001 back in the CD case, and I put on Prodigy, Fat of the Land. And then up comes Smack My Bitch Up or something, whatever that song is. And my mum goes, "You are not listening to that around me." So I had these two albums that I had to listen to in my room quietly because it was so absurd. And then I also remember my mum worked in a music library, or she worked in the library and she worked in the music section. And you guys are gonna, this is a sin really, but I said to her, "I really want to hear the Chili Peppers," and I'd heard something on the radio, and this is exactly what we're talking about. And I didn't know what song I heard. I just thought, I'm gonna find it. So she brings back Blood Sugar Sex Magic, which is one of my all-time favorite records. But
got to be the best one. It's got to be the best Chili's record.
It is. Yeah. It is. But check this out. I put it on. I can't find the single I'm looking for. I gave it back to her.
Oh,
the face. If everyone listening to this could see you two looking at me now, it was disgust.
But that's
it's like so bad.
But again, your mind was geared towards the single song. Again, that's what we're talking about, wasn't it? Earlier, it's like not viewing an album as a body of work has been a big thing, you know, and it still is. Like it's huge. Do you know what? I don't remember specifically my first CD that I bought, but I can tell you where I would have bought it. Woolworths. Remember Woolworths?
Woolworths. Bring back Woolworths.
Bit of everything. Jack of all trades, master of none.
Pick and mix.
Pick and mix, mate. How many sweets did you eat before you actually took the bag to the...
I used to go to the optician with my mum, get my eyes tested, and there was a
Woolworths
next door. No, there was a Woolworths next door.
Woolworths does everything.
They did everything.
Got my glasses there. It's like Lidl nowadays, you get everything there.
Hey, Lidl's is great.
Lidl's is wicked. That middle aisle, I tell you, come out with a chainsaw and a wetsuit or something like.
I never go to Lidl.
Oh mate, you're missing out.
It's amazing.
You're missing out.
I never go. I am apparently.
You never know what you're going to get. I'm telling you, could be anything.
Special. You might even find a Phil Collins record in there.
Amongst the slow cookers and the barbecue tongs and all that.
Something I want to discuss. Why is Phil Collins so love or hate?
Oh, that's a good question, man.
It is. I think a lot of he always gets that label of being like the epitome of like middle of the road, doesn't he?
But he's actually amazing.
I know.
Maybe it's the hardcore Genesis fans from back in the day that didn't like his solo career. This is me speaking speculatively.
I think there's a lot of that in there for sure.
Yeah.
But then I'm talking about, there was an artist I was on tour with for quite a few years with the same group of people, and the whole joke became that I loved Phil Collins. Now, I didn't actually love him or hate him. I enjoyed him, and I probably, although I grew up with him, wasn't like a huge fan. But they all hated him. It was this whole joke that he was rubbish, and then he'd always come on the radio. It didn't matter where we were. We were in Germany, we were in France, we were in England, wherever. Phil Collins came on the radio. And they hated him. And I could never work out. And it's become clear that he really is like hit or miss for people.
I feel like with that sort of thing, though, it's almost the novelty of... It's never like massively justifiable by those people. It's always just a bit of a novelty to like really dislike someone. Do you know what I mean? They find
true.
it's a bit of humour.
It's probably more of a social thing.
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? It becomes like, because I know there was a punk band I used to play in years ago, and that was the same. They categorically hated Phil Collins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know.
But then you play a song like Easy Lover. Who can't love that?
Exactly. It's got it all. It's got it all,
That's a great tune.
It's got everything.
Yeah, it's amazing. But interestingly, back to this album, is that actually, if you listen to this album, I bet there's a lot of songs. You know, everyone knows Phil Collins. How many songs on this album, which is such a huge record, how many songs do people actually know from it? They know In the Air Tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Probably that, I would say.
What else do they know? Considering it's his biggest selling record, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it was debut and biggest.
I have to be honest here. Controversial, I know. Not my favourite Phil Collins album.
I agree.
Not my favourite.
I like his Tarzan work, to be honest. He's actually a genius on that. But I would agree with you, Mike. But how has this album sold so well? Yeah, it's got one big hit, In the Air Tonight. There's not actually his other. What was that? There was a huge song he wrote in this period. He didn't put it on this record. Against All Odds, maybe.
Yes,
there you go.
He wrote it during this time. I don't know if it ended up on which album. I don't know, but it was called something else, and it became Against All Odds later.
This album's got You Know What I Mean, which is like the piano ballad of the album, isn't it?
We shouldn't forget to point out
that.
Sorry, I was going to say that he plays piano on the album.
Coming back to what we were saying about how multi-talented some of these guys are, you know, that whole group of people, it's just insane. It's just absolutely insane, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you could be a songwriter as a drummer without having to get your chops down on some kind of harmonic instrument. You know what I mean? You have to write somehow. You can't.
Sure, but I don't know if people sometimes just see him as a frontman singer, because you can be a singer and not necessarily write the songs. Like he's playing all the he's playing a lot of the instruments on here.
Well, he had a super hands-on approach to this record, like as with most of them, I think, as with all of them, I think he's a very hands-on with the recording process and the production process.
Not as handsy as the old decorator, though, is he?
Really? Are we going there? We're celebrating the man's album, Johnny.
Well, but it's because of that reason we're celebrating it.
That's true.
Yeah. Do you know, moving on, I think the production of this one is definitely worth sort of noting, worth recognising, because it is such a raw sounding production, isn't it? It doesn't, like, it's not super polished. It's not super clean. Like, you listen to some of his other records and they are a bit more sort of like bigger sounding and polished, and whereas this one it does sound very raw. It does sound almost not demo-esque, but it does sound very
Yeah, I guess where that comes from, isn't it? Because a lot of the demos we used and then just overdubs, so that would make sense.
And that would maybe explain the turnaround, the record being finished in January and out in Feb.
Nothing is overly produced, you know.
Yes.
Yeah. You've also got one of the best horn sections in the world, I guess.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He's got such a great group of musicians.
Yeah. Was it right you were saying, Johnny, it's the Earth, Wind and Fire horn section?
Yeah. So I don't actually know a lot about the history of whether they are lots of members of those guys. They call themselves the Phoenix Horns. But they're from Earth, Wind and Fire. So I don't know if that means there's a big collective that come in and out. I'm not sure if someone else can answer that for me. But they're now the guys, I think I'm right in saying, that play with him live still. I think, Mike, is that right? Do you know?
Yeah, I think so. I think they toured with them and toured with him a lot.
Yeah,
I think.
So he's got such a great group of musicians around him.
Yeah.
But also something I found out that between him starting to write these demos and the Genesis guys going to do their solo stuff, when they came back to do Duke, which was in, I believe, it was 1980, so a year before this album, which is another great record, they came together and brought some ideas to the table. And there's this sort of funny quote somewhere in his book that said about how the other guys in Genesis say they never heard In the Air Tonight, because In the Air Tonight was so huge. They said, well, if we'd heard that, we would have heard that on a Genesis record. So it's funny how these things kind of work out, what record it ended up on.
You were talking about Droned, Johnny.
Yes, I love it.
And I really enjoy the sort of, I believe it was a guy called El Shankar who recorded the
violins, the tambura.
Yeah, exactly. All of those.
Also on here it says voice drums, because there's that takadimi, really, really cool thing.
I would love to hear your impression of this, Dion.
Yes, just go. Let's hear it.
Maybe save that for another time. I want people to actually listen to this again. So.
I think that would bring people back.
So he played violins, right, as well, this dude?
Violins, tambura. So I didn't know what a tambura was, but it's an Indian instrument, stringed instrument. And then voice drums. And then Phil plays piano, Prophet, congas, the voice, and claps.
I heard that he had a 70s fusion group with John McLaughlin, Shankar, called Shakti.
No way.
Yeah, I read that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I think he did stuff with Peter Gabriel and Frank Zappa as well that I've read about. So he's obviously kind of got his foot in that sort of like fusion-y, sort of proggy fusion world.
Well, it's interesting how musicians, I think when musicians have like an area that they excel in, that they end up finding themselves in these circles and they kind of get passed along these amazing musicians. You mentioned people like Zappa.
Yeah.
They don't use anybody. They use the best. So it's amazing that they kind of jump from group to group, and I find that really interesting. And I guess in many ways, it's still like that now, where you do something, you can be versatile, but you still get known for being great at something, or really good at something.
Yeah, plus the collaborations that happen between these guys as well, like Clapton, Clapton and Phil, they made some of the best tracks, in my opinion, together, man. Bad Love.
Yeah.
What a banger. What a banger.
So good.
So good.
So good.
But you can tell from his drum sound. You know exactly who's playing on that.
Remember, we listened to that in the van in Finland, and I didn't actually know that was Phil Collins on drums on that tune. And then when you said it, I was like, how did I not know this?
Instantly you go, oh yeah, of course, yeah.
And I Wish It Were Brain Down, which is on another Phil Collins record. But seriously, I think.
Such a great song.
Probably my favourite Phil Collins album, actually. It's just... He's at peak Phil, I think, at this peak Phil, and there's so many cool things on. It's just a killer record.
Yeah. Peak Phil.
Honourable mention if we're talking about this kind of stuff. There's just so many good tunes on. But seriously, I think, and No Jacket Required.
No Jacket Required's wicked. Yeah. But man, I've got such an unbelievable soft spot for Another Day in Paradise, though. That tune is just it's just so good, isn't it?
But that's what I mean. We're talking about all these amazing tracks of his that aren't on his biggest selling record or his most well-known record. I'm not sure officially. But these songs are on different albums. Yeah, Face Value is the one that's always talked about.
I just want to know what it must feel like to be Phil Collins, someone like Phil Collins now, and to look back at a body of work that is so great and as successful as that. Like, what must that feel like? It's just such an incredible thing to be able to have. It's a legacy, isn't it?
Hell of an achievement.
Yeah.
I mean,
at 30 years old.
Even the Tarzan, you made a joke about Tarzan earlier, but
yeah.
I mean, that soundtrack as well.
Oh, it's amazing. And actually, there's a really interesting section in his autobiography where he talks about that and making that. And it's really interesting, his career and his success. And he jokes about how he's that guy that just keeps on turning up. And that's why people kind of love to hate him, because he's just always there. So I'm interested to ask you guys, what do you think of the album? Is it something you're going to listen to a lot of? Do you love it? Do you kind of, if you're rating it?
What, Face Value?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's just one of those records, isn't it? It is one. It is the one.
What is the significance of finishing with Somewhere Over the Rainbow, though? Does anyone know what that's about?
It's got to be a tribute to like Lennon in some way, like
yeah,
you know, because he, like John Lennon, it was kind of around the time of his death, right? Let's Google that.
Let's check that out. 1980. There you go. 8th of December 1980. Yeah.
So I think the reason the track's on there, I think, is a tribute. You know, it's a tribute to Lennon, and yeah, things just get a bit weird on that track. But it's not my favorite, I gotta say. It's not. But all in all, it's a killer album. There's so many, like, as a bass player looking at this record, and like Alphonso Johnson's bass lines on like This Must Be Love. It's just, I love me a fretless bass, man, and some of this stuff it's just so cool. Thunder and Lightning as well, like I said, from my favorite track on there. It's got so much sort of Earth, Wind and Fire kind of vibes in it, like such a heavy influence, you know.
That's also about who became his second wife, Jill. So there was 2 songs he was saying. I think it was This Must Be Love and Thunder and Lightning. They were about Jill and supposed to be separate to the whole writing about his divorce and breakup with his family. So it was that's why he talks about, and that's why he named it Face Value, that it was supposed to be a really personal album that kind of delves in, but it's not all doom and gloom. And he says that so many people have tried to pull apart songs to go, oh, he means this by that, or he's seen somebody drowned, or there were some really funny stories I read online that you'd have to search the facts, or the wrong ones, as it were. And there's some really funny stories that Phil also mentions in his book that they're just not true. So it's interesting.
Oh, really? So there was a lot of fabrication and stuff.
Well, just that people would try and pick apart In the Air Tonight, and he's like, well, no, I just sang lyrics. He said, yeah, maybe it was in my subconscious somewhere, but I just sang and then wrote down the lyrics. He goes, so people are pulling apart things that they don't need to. And it goes back to what we're saying about how do you listen to a record? Like, do you try and work out what someone's saying in this weird way of trying to like tell a story, or do you just take it for what it is?
Yeah, exactly. You can take it in different ways. I want to actually give an honourable mention as well. I love I Missed Again. I mean, that is a vibe, isn't it? It's just that tempo is like, you know, it's it's just makes you move, doesn't it?
Yeah,
like
and interesting.
100 or 105 or something like that. It's just feels so good, you know.
Yeah, it's great actually, and also so when I was listening to it on vinyl, when you turn it over, that's the first track of the side 2. So it's a real like a different way of listening to it, but you've just come out of Hand in Hand, which is a completely different vibe.
It is almost like 2 halves. It's almost like 2 halves, isn't it?
Exactly. That's the sort of like split in the middle, isn't it? You know, that
Hand in Hand. Like you said, it's almost like it is the end of the first half, or like the first act.
That's how it feels like to listen to it. And then I listened to it this morning on Spotify, just to kind of refresh myself. And to be honest, my mum, the record my mum gave me, she's listened to it so much, it's got a few scratches here or there. So I was like, I just wanted to listen to it on Spotify. And it was weird to go from Hand in Hand straight into I Missed Again, because you almost have that little breathing space of turn it over, whereas on this, you just listen through. So again, it goes down to how a body of work and how they made it. And to Peter Gabriel's album, So, that's where it made me sort of have my eyes open a bit more to this stuff. It's where there was a track, and don't quote, I couldn't tell you what song it is, but he wanted it in a certain place on the album, but because at the end of the vinyl there's not as much bass or something.
That's right, In Your Eyes.
He had to move it where he had it on the vinyl because there was more bass. Yeah. Otherwise it didn't sound as good.
That's right, he definitely did that. And later on, when they brought it out on CD, they changed the order. Like, he put it where he wanted it on the record.
Exactly. So you see that these artists, these musicians, they write this body of work, as Mike calls it, and it's like a whole thing.
Mm-hmm. That's how it's intended to be listened to, yeah. Okay, let's go. So we're going to do a little review to conclude. I'm going to go with, I feel like I need to digest this album start to finish a couple more times, but I'm going to go with I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10 for me. I like it. I really like it. It as I said, it has a bit of everything. I like the kind of journey it takes you on, and the fact that you can see it in two halves. I like the upbeat stuff as much as I like all the kind of wistful, proggy stuff as well. So I'm going to go with 7 out of 10 for Big Phil face value. All right, go for it. Mike, you want to go next?
Sure. This album, man, I've known it for years. So it was out before I was alive. So I've sort of definitely listened to it a hell of a lot. It's just a solid album. It's an amazing record. It's got so many good tunes in there. Like I said, it's got that Earth, Wind and Fire thing, which I really dig. In the Air Tonight's a huge tune. I'd have to say not my favourite. And the last track on there, like I said, it's not a huge win for me. I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10 though. It's got all the elements that I like.
Okay, so for me, I feel very similar to Mike with this, that I've known it a long time. I kind of grew up on it, but I'm really kind of delving into it now. It's obviously I think it's such a strong opening. It offers me a lot in terms of like, it has that brass, it has a proggy section, it has the ballads, it has everything that you don't often get with a record. I don't love it like crazy. I think it's really good. I really love its creativity, and I think it's really interesting to listen to, and I really love the fact that the drum machines, which was kind of a new thing around then. I will also give it an 8 out of 10.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for listening. That was the first episode of The Vinyl Destination. Please get in touch on our email address if you've got any suggestions for any future albums that you'd like us to cover. Otherwise, see you next time. Nice one, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Cheers.